hearing anybody. Is anybody on?
Hi, Diana. Are you ready to take the screen?
Okay, I'm not hearing you. You're like far, far away.
Oh, sorry. Our things were on mute. Are you ready to take the
Hey,
share?
you know what? It's not connecting properly. Let me just call in. I'm fine visual. I'll just hang up and call in again.
Okay.
Okay. Hello. Hello. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're broadcasting. We're all good. Can you hear us?
Yeah, no, I put you on hold and did a call, and I don't know, it seemed to have done something, and then I couldn't hear you on my headset. It's fine. We're all good.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to pass the screen to you, okay?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
I haven't got the screen share request. There we go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our second series of our business building webinar series. This is part 2 of hiring virtual employees with Dianna Thorne. My name is Stephen Choi, and I'm joined by Carla Romeo. We are account managers in the Accountants channel for QuickBooks Online, and we're so glad that you've joined us today to learn more about building your business. So, a brief agenda for today's webinar. We've got you for the next hour. We'll pause midway through just for a brief poll, and then some Q&A at the end of the hour. Dianna Thorne is our guest speaker today, president of Targeted Accounting. She is a CPA, CA with more than 25 years of accounting and business management experience. Dianna is an accomplished speaker and is part of Intuit's Writer Trainer Network. Targeted Accounting is an 18-year-old company with over 35 staff across the country. They provide day-to-day bookkeeping and accounting consulting, as well as streamlining accounting and administrative tasks for entrepreneurial companies. After creating the wheel to establish better workflow and automated processes in their company, they share their findings with other entrepreneurs. What is cool about Dianna? When she's not counting things in her job, she counts her hand in embroidery, creating unique pieces of art. She is currently president of the Embroiderers Association of Canada. So welcome and thanks so much for speaking for us today, Dianna. I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, guys, very much. And hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us again today. Some of you, I think, are from earlier in the week, which is great. So this whole topic is going to be on the virtual side of hiring and what do we do with those employees. So here's a little bit of an agenda. They've already done the introduction. We're going to talk about why would you hire a virtual employee. When we get about halfway through, we're going to have a polling question, which my lovely assistants are going to manage, and you'll all get to vote. And then after that, we'll be talking about hiring the right virtual employee and what that looks like and working with them. Okay, so Why on earth would you hire a virtual employee? I have been doing it for, I would say, the last 10 years of my 18 years in business. I find that people want to be close to wherever they work. And back when I started doing this, there wasn't a lot of working at home, but I had client needs all across the GTA in Ontario. Now we're across the country, and we actually have staff who could be in Edmonton, and they're working on a Toronto client. So to that point, our very first point on this slide is it's the opportunity to hire the very best talent. So you're not restricted by who can make it to your office when you deal with virtual employees. You are, no restrictions. I would have to say my furthest away from our office, he is in Spain. He was in Canada. He knows all the Canadian rules, but he said, why am I sitting here? He's close to retirement age. His family is all in the UK. He wanted to be close to them. So he still works on, I think, 30 of our clients in a certain capacity, and he works from Spain on his time. He talks with us in the mornings, etc. We don't have an issue. But we do have people in many time zones across Canada. So we get to hire the very best person who's got the same mindset as us, who wants to be doing this, wants to be working with us, and then we can match up the right people with the right job. So you open up the world to yourself by hiring somebody virtually. So I've said you have the ability to have the right staff at your disposal for the right job whenever it comes up. No need for an extra desk space in your office. My office is a home-based office, and I have 7 workstations, and we used to have them pretty full. And now, with the cloud accounting and the apps and making it so easy for us to work anywhere, I tell you, on average, I have only 3 people in my office at any time, where we used to get really quite full, and I didn't know what we were going to do when I ran out of room. Now, you don't have to have an extra desk, an extra computer. Everybody can work from wherever they are. So that means the next point, low overhead cost of hiring. Before, when you'd hire somebody, you'd have to have a space, a desk, a computer, etc. Now the cost is really going to be whatever software applications that you're going to have them use. So really low overhead when you have virtual employees. You can service now a new region. If you want to do on-site, we still do a lot of on-site work, but now I can do on-site work in Edmonton, Calgary, Ottawa, Southern Ontario, where else? BC, in the Vancouver area, right? Like, that means you can do some work close to that person, as well as they can be doing virtual for any client anywhere in Canada. You perhaps could have the person hourly. Maybe, this is what I find. When you think you want to hire, sometimes you're like, but I don't think I have 40 hours. So that's always a problem, right? So maybe you're hiring somebody who has other clients or another job, so you're only doing partial. I will tell you, my mix is employees and subcontractors. So it, again, widens that availability of who can I hire, what do they look like. It also allows for people who need a bit more flexibility in their schedule. Moms, for instance, who need some flexibility. It just doesn't matter. So you can do hourly, full-time, part-time, whatever makes sense for you. You can build them to full-time, which is what I love. Okay, so then obviously there are some cons to virtual hires. You don't see them physically at work, so you can't see, are they at their desk? Do they have their head down? Are they getting work done? But there's other ways that we can deal with that, and we'll talk about that in a bit. How do you train them if they're not on site? Well, whereas of that old mentality that you need to be right beside me for me to train, well, guess what? You guys are taking a webinar right now. That's how we train these days. So it's not limiting that they're not right beside you. We can do virtual training as well. When do they start and stop? Well, does it really matter as long as they're working for the most part in the business hours? We require anybody we hire to, that this is not an extra job for after they work their full-time job and this is extra pay for them. No, we only hire people who can work during business hours. And yes, we all know, all of us put some time in after after hours, and a lot of my people, because they're subcontracts, they're working early in the morning before they go off to a client. They're working late at night after they put kids to bed. They're working on the weekend. That is their choice if they want to get some work done, etc. That is not our requirements. Our requirements are you have availability to deal with clients and other staff members during the business day. Now, the bigger issue on a con is your company, your firm, up with the time? So could you handle a virtual client or a virtual employee? So when I started doing virtual employees, I went, okay, how do I deal with the people that aren't the on-site people? So on-site was fine. They could go from their home to on-site, didn't matter. But then I would give them a client that was an in-house QuickBooks desktop client, say. And so now I have to have that program somewhere. So we would have our people actually use Windows remote desktop connection. So again, and then there's VPN. We've VPN'd into other clients' offices. I mean, there's loads of ways that you can deal with it, but you got to assess, do I have myself set up for that? Am I also accepting of a cloud system like QuickBooks Online and the related products and the apps that go with it? Am I okay with using that? Have I been using it? Do I know how they all work together? And then we still have documents. So then where are we going to put those documents, those Word documents, those PDF documents, those Excel spreadsheets, right? Where are we going to put those? We're so used to saving those either on our C drive or on our physical server in our office. Well, yes, if they remote access in, they could get it. But maybe if you're going all virtual, which we've got quite a big cloud representation in our firm now, we need somewhere that's also on the cloud. So maybe you need to look at that. So I'm going to say you can't be the old-fashioned, yeah, okay, everybody will just VPN in or remote access in. I'm going to say that is one option, but to fully be able to do this, that you have to be cloud embracing. You have to be setting things up to make it easy access for everybody to see everything. So one thing you're going to need to do is review your software that you're using and determine how is a virtual employee likely to be able to use it. What limitations does that software have for you to work in a virtual world? So now the solutions. We've already talked about remote desktop. Windows has that, but you have to have a certain setup. You just can't say, okay, I'm going to go find that on my C drive. You need to have that set up and working, and you might need an IT person to help out with that. Maybe you want to use something like LogMeIn, right? Some other kind of app out there that's going to allow people in. TeamViewer is another one that you can, and maybe you're using it to do some assistance with your clients when they have an issue and it's just a quick issue and you don't want to have to go to their offices. Maybe you look at cloud hosting. A lot of people have looked at cloud hosting. I know if you have clients on enterprise, Intuit even offers cloud hosting for the enterprise product. So you can look at some cloud hosting and see if that works for everybody. And then just the cloud solutions such as QBO and the other apps that all you need is a browser and the internet. Then you can be in anywhere, right? The bigger issue will be on those clients or those, not clients, on those employees that you're hiring or staff members. Are they in a place where they can get proper internet? That can be an issue, right? Make sure they're not in a dial-up only, that they actually have high-speed internet, because they're definitely going to need that. Now, how do you find these virtual people? Well, it's almost the same as hiring an in-office person, right? You're still going to post a job. You're going to post it on whatever sites, Indeed, LinkedIn, wherever. You're still going to post like normal. But how do you try and attract those people that are somewhere else? Well, a lot of the job posting facilities out there have you put in your location, but sometimes they allow you not to put in a location or to put in like a province if you want them all in Ontario or something. So sometimes you can do that and broaden what you say, or say just Canada, and then in your job description put this person would be working virtually so they can be anywhere, right? Maybe though you want it in the same time zone. Perhaps you can state all that in the job description. When you wouldn't believe, I will put in, literally today, I'm hiring someone internal. We had somebody who's partially leaving, and I'm revamping a position internally. And so I need someone that I really do want, this one person, because of the work I want to do with them, to be in my office, where most everybody else doesn't matter for me. They can be virtual. I've put out, and I said it has to be in Richmond Hill. That's where I am. You would not believe. I get people from Quebec applying. I get people from Calgary applying. And they don't necessarily want to move here. Yes, you get the people out of country who say, oh, I'll move anywhere. That's not it. You would not believe. People are searching everywhere, and they're sometimes suggesting, could I do this virtually? So I'm telling you that the people out there are even asking for it and looking for it. You can also put in another location. If you wanted to, let's say you want to keep it all in Ontario, if you're in Ontario, and let's say you're kind of in the GTA, but you maybe want to do Kingston or something. You can put in whatever location you want and find somebody in that area. Maybe you've got some potential clients that are going to be using you that are in some other location, so you'd like to have somebody local. Well, then put that location in and spread the people out. But what I'm telling you is most of these sites now do not force you to put in a location, so it's not a big deal, and the people will come to you. Now, people who were in my session earlier in the week, 2 slides. I told everybody 2 slides would be the same. So the next 2 slides are the same as what you already had. Just so you know, the rest is all new. The vetting process. Well, you're going to vet a resume like usual, right? I mean, they still need whatever requirements you need. So you're still going to compare it to the job description. I suggest you have a checklist on what your perfect candidate is, because remember, now you're broadening your sites. You don't have to just take whoever's local and hope for the best. You're broadening your sites. And the best thing is, if any of you that are listening are in kind of outside of city places, right? You're in smaller communities, hiring virtual is ideal for you, because you might say, yeah, I've tapped the market. There's nobody close to me, and yet I'm growing. So because we can have clients all over the place, we can also have employees and staff all over the place. So this is ideal for you. So figure out, if you had to pick the absolute best candidate, what would they look like? And put that checklist down, so when you're reviewing, you put their name down and you check, and what do they have and what do they not have, and you quickly then can get rid of the ones that are so-so. You know how you're like, well, I'm not getting that much, so I'll take a so-so. You don't have to. Get rid of those. Prepare a pre-screening questionnaire. Now, I use Jobilico. It's Jobillico. It's fairly new. It's Canadian, but they have 2 million people on, so people know about them. And I've been using them for almost exactly a year. And when I do it there, they have what's called a pre-screening questionnaire. They brought that out just after I started using them. And a lot of the other posting places don't. Now, maybe they are, because usually if one's doing it, another's doing it. So I don't know, but I haven't seen, like an Indeed or whatever, I haven't seen that there's pre-screening on there. But look and see if there is a pre-screening, or create your own by using SurveyMonkey. So you can create your own with a free SurveyMonkey survey and send it to one that an applicant that you say, yes, I think this could be a possibility. So the pre-screening it's not going to waste your time. You get some important answers to things so that you can say, yes, I still like them. Or nope, not what I'm looking for. But you really wasted no time. All you did is email a link to something, or it's through the job posting site, and they get an email with a link. Also have a test. I test every single person who works for me. I don't care what level. I don't care how many designations. Everybody writes a test. It's a 3-hour online test, and I'm going to talk about that later and what all I put in it, etc., because then you aren't just looking at their resume. You're seeing, do they really know what they say they know? Or do they kind of sort of know it? And you can kind of find out what level are they at. So I do both a pre-screening questionnaire and I have a test. So this is the part that's the same as earlier in the week. We know the average job length is less than 2.5 years. So review and look for, how many jobs, how long have they stayed. So a lot of us haven't hired before or hired very little, so these things aren't top of mind for us. So put that on your checklist. Are they staying more than 2.5 years? Because I will tell you, so many people, it's a year, it's less than a year. It's insane what I see. Look and see if there's a culture fit. So if you kind of know what you think your culture is, or maybe it's just you and you're hiring the first time, kind of think, well, what do I want? I want, someone who's going to like their work, somebody who I'm going to enjoy working. What is it, you kind of want from the person? See where they were working and see if they sound like fun places and there was a culture there that's going to match what you're looking for. Look and see if they have a growth mindset. Well, depending, if you're hiring and you want the person to do the same old over and over, don't have to worry. Maybe you want no growth mindset. Or maybe, yes, you want someone and you can see you're going to advance them to once they know your ways and how you do things, you want to advance them to a more manager or a senior bookkeeper position or something. So look and see if they look like they're willing to learn and they've been advancing already in their own career. Look for evidence that they take on diverse or increasing responsibilities. Does the person have a full profile on whatever social media site they might be on? I always go and check people out on their social media, see what they're up to, what are they. You can get kind of an idea, do I like what I see on these social media sites or do I not? Have they taken extra time to do full profiles on Indeed? I mean, Indeed, if they're not on Indeed, why? Why are they not on Indeed? They should be as a professional setup. I mean, if you only want a data entry person, maybe not. But if you want a full-rounded, they're up with the times, then up with the times means they're on social sites. This is the other one that I had on the other presentation, which is the red flags on the candidates. Do they have gaps in the applicant's career? Now, being a woman, I know there might be gaps. Why? We all stop and have a bit of a family, usually. So look and see, based on when they went to high school, et cetera, does that make sense? Those are what their gaps. Does it look like maybe they're finished their gaps? You can't ask those questions, but you can sure peruse the resume and you can kind of figure out, well, where are they? Are they more mature? Are they starting off? Where are they? Again, you're going to see, do they have the short job tenure or do they look like people who stay somewhere? Are they using vague or ambiguous wording, such as familiar with something or they participated in? That means they kind of assisted, but they weren't in charge. They weren't doing it. So look for that type of wording. We tend to gloss over that wording and we see, oh, they have AR, they have collections, they have whatever, but we don't kind of see the word assisted with collections, or which means they kind of did the odd email maybe. It doesn't necessarily mean they took that job on fully, so look for that. Look for grammatical errors. I hate grammatical errors. In this day and age, we have spell correct, right? We have, and even it looks for that, is that the right word in this sentence, in this use? And if it's the right word, so the spell check didn't catch it and it's used in the wrong way, it means they didn't reread what they typed. They should be rereading it. They should be giving it to someone else. So someone who doesn't take any time to double check those things is not going to take the extra care and time in doing your client's work, right? So that speaks to itself if they can't do that. So to me, it's very important. Here's what we kind of tend to ask in our pre-screening. I always ask, what interests you about the position? Oh, you would not believe what insight you can get from people. What interests me in the position is I'm bored at my other job. Like can't believe what some people write. Like they should be presenting themselves to you. They should be selling themselves to you. So it's an opportunity, and do they waste it or do they give you something? Do they pick certain things that you put in your job description and say, I've always wanted to learn that. I know this part, but I thought this is, a good growth area for me. What have they done to sell themselves on it? So it gives you kind of bit, are they kind of boring and flat or are they interesting? That's going to give you a little bit of insight into their into who they are and how they would be with you. Ask, why do they want to work virtually? There's a lot of things that can be said, and you wouldn't believe, like they may say, well, it's really important for me to drop my kids off from school or what have you. They'll put all kinds of things. But again, it gives you insight. Okay, what is going on in their personal life? Maybe they're going to say, I had to move for my husband's job and now I have no contacts here. I'm finding it very difficult to, get into doing this. I've always worked in, in an accounting type atmosphere and had multi-clients or whatever. Like, you would not believe what they're going to say. There's a story behind everybody's reason. So I find it always good to ask, why do you want to do this? I always ask about what version of, we always look for both people on QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, because we still have lots of clients on both. So I'll ask them what version of the software, because they've listed, they work on all these different softwares, but they never put in what version. So you would not believe how many times I've had, 2012? Yeah, no, that's not an up-to-date version. You are expecting when they say QuickBooks Desktop that they're kind of on either this year's or last year's. You don't expect them to be 5 years old. So I always ask, what's the version you're on? And I also kind of, maybe ask Pro, Premier, whatever. I try to find that out too, because Pro has a lot less features than Premier, and you're going to want someone who kind of knows both. I always ask now if they work on multiple screens, and I will tell you, I would say about 80% or more say yes, they work on multiple screens, which I'm so glad to hear. I personally work on 3 screens. So, and I can't not work on 3 screens. Every day, majority of the time I'm on 2, but every day I'm using that 3rd screen as well. So I always ask, because then they know how to break out their Chrome and everything and put them on 2 screens and be working in a cloud environment. It gives you that insight. Are they used to working without paper in front of them? I also ask if they have a headset. I'm working with this webinar with a headset. I couldn't do it if I didn't have a headset. We use other things to communicate, which I'm going to get into, and a headset to me is vital. My headset can do through my computer using Skype for Business. It can do my cell phone and it can do my landline phone. I can switch back and forth. So I just find it really important, and it allows me to have my hands free to take notes if I'm talking with a client or a staff member or what have you. So headset, really important. Now, they don't have one and they're going to be an employee or whatever. We'll get into what do you pay for, but do they have one? That's a bonus. I always ask them, how's your office set up? And let them tell me what all do they have, because it lets me know, do they just have something really basic, or are they really set up to get going? Do they have 2 monitors or 3 monitors? And here's the question, the comment I made earlier. I also would ask them, do you have high-speed internet? You just want to make sure that they're going to be able to work well with you. So now what to test? In my test, and I do go over, I'm going to give you some websites that are out there to use. I test what I call the day-to-day knowledge. I call my test the in-tray test. It's whatever would have been thrown in that corner in-tray in an accounting department. So it's everything that goes in there. I ask for journal entries about a transaction, so I'll give them a general transaction. I'll say, what's the journal entry? I'll ask them maybe what are some CRA rules around it. It might be sales tax related, GST, HST. It might be tax deductibility related. It might be payroll related. Sometimes I don't even tell them. I'll just say, what's the tax consequences of this? And see what they come up with. I have one question I ask, and I say, what's the tax consequences besides something else I ask about it? And you wouldn't believe, people think it's a taxable benefit. It's to do with mileage. I say, you have to pay Joe Blow employee mileage. Here's the amount of kilometers they submitted, and here's the rate. And I ask them to tell me the tax consequences. Oh my gosh. The rate, and I state, the rate is the allowed CRA rate for whatever year. They come back with, this is a taxable benefit, it's this, it's that. Then you know they don't know what they're talking about, right? Because of course it's an allowed expense, and the tax consequence is we have to back out GST and HST. We're allowed to do that and claim an ITC. So I get into really nitty-gritty to find out what do they know, and I call it my in-tray test. And I also, in my test, I am software specific, meaning I ask, and how would you do this in QuickBooks Desktop? So I want to know, are they using a lot of the features, or do they just really know basic data entry? It gives me some insight in that. Ask some analytical questions. I ask behavioral questions. The analytical is that I do, I give them financial statements and ask them to comment on it and see what they come up with. I just, no notes, just they look like notice to reader statements. I find out what do they see? What do they want to comment on? What do they think's going on? And then the behavioral values question, we have company core values. So I take some of those and I've come up with some questions. And you can come up with, if you Google, there's behavioral questions out there to ask either in an interview or for a test. And I ask them, you know, here was this, tell me a situation where this happened and how you dealt with it. So just to get some insight on how they're thinking and how they would behave in different scenarios. Maybe it's, you know, an angry client calls up on the phone and starts reaming you out. How do you deal with it, right? Just to get an idea of some things that you know are going to happen to them and what would they do, and it's not their company, right? That you need to make sure they're going to represent you well. So in the test, there's two types. There's a fully written out version, which is what I do for, I want to know everything between the ears. So, and then there's the other where you can do a multiple choice, or is that really multiple guess? Because you give them 3 choices or 4 choices, they have a percentage of getting it right without really knowing anything. So if you want it to mark automatically, you absolutely have to do a multiple choice option. But for myself, my own staffing, I do fully written out. And any hiring I do for clients, I do fully written out questions because I want to see, without giving them much, I want to see what's going on in their thought process. And I love it when some of the people answer, well, that depends. Well, you know what? They're absolutely right on some of my questions. It depends. It depends on what the client wants. It depends on what the client's willing to pay for. It depends. So when they say that, I know the wheels are now turning, and I love that. And they'll give me, well, this is what I do if it was this scenario, and this is what I do if it was that scenario. That's great insight on a person. But if I will tell you, of course, my test is like 40 questions. It takes me about a half an hour to mark it. So if you don't want to be doing that and you want a self-marking, go the multiple choice route. So here I told you, and I think this webinar is being taped, so I know you guys can get copies of this, or take your phone, or your tablet, take a screenshot. These are some sites. I personally use ClassMarker. It allows for multiple choice written tests, breakdown of topic areas, so you can say these are general accounting, these are AR, these are sales, these are, you know, multi-currency questions. You can break it all down so you can see they did really well in a certain area. You can what was the other thing I was thinking? Oh, the marking, you can do it, partial marks, etc. And I've used it for years. I've used ClassMarker, I'm going to say for 7 or more years. Very cost effective. Like I pay $25 and you get 100 tests. I think it's 25. It might have gone up recently, but it's like next to nothing. So, and they only take one off your list if someone submits. So you would not believe how many people go into the test and they don't finish it. And we know if they even open the test and how long they were in the test. And usually if they get past the 15-minute mark, they carry on. If they don't, they abandon the test and never submit it. These are some other ones I found: HR Avatar, pre-employment tests, the Hire Talent, and Plum. So I haven't tried them. I did look them up, and if you want to compare, I'm going to tell you a website out there is Capterra, CAPTERRA.com, and it will take all kinds of different apps and compare them. I use it constantly, whether I'm comparing apps to use with QuickBooks Online or I'm looking for something like this. Whenever I go out and look for something, I compare there, and they've got an amazing and you can pick the different ones, and then it'll compare its pricing, features. It shows you all the features they have, which instead of you doing it individually and trying to put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's free. So use that if you're kind of looking to see what could I use. Okay, we're at the audience poll, and I'm going to let my assistants assist with the poll.
Thanks, Dianna. Thanks, Dianna. It's been incredibly insightful so far. So right now we are going to take a quick poll. And if everyone could just quickly answer the question so we can gauge where you're at. Have you ever tested a candidate before? Yes, no, or you've never hired before?
Wow, we're getting better polling results than earlier in the week. We only had 71%. We're at 81 now. Pretty good.
Really good. Perfect. Can we make it a little bit higher?
I don't know. Somebody's not voting.
It's anonymous, everyone, so feel free.
We're up to 83. Well, I think we've gotten a pretty good idea. So
Yes.
you can see there we've only got 28% who have ever tested and 59% who say no. And then we've got our group 13 that never hired before. I'm going to tell you, and I did on the session I did earlier in the week, I had some stats in there about how many people they inflate their job title, they inflate, how much they got paid. They kind of make it a little more than it was. So if the test tells the tale, and you spend so much time finding the person, bringing them on, getting them into your way of doing it, they take your personal time. You have to make sure you're hiring right. So I'm going to tell you, 1 year my assistant, she looked at our stats for tests. She had sent out, get this, 700 tests in a 1 year period. But we're always hiring. But 700 tests, and only 125 bothered to even go into it. And out of that, not all of those finished. I can't remember what she said, how many finished. It was a lot less than that. So if people can't take the time and the effort to show how much they know, they're not going to take the time and effort with your clients. That's just my opinion, but they don't care. They're not going to put the effort in. So I really, really say and push the test. I know a few other firms that do testing in various ways. I know somebody else who uses the class marker to do their test, and they do it as a multiple choice. So I would absolutely recommend you do that for the bit of effort, and especially if you're going to probably hire more than once. I mean, you do your test once, and it's the same test, right? So it's an effort once, but I think it's worth the time. Okay, we're moving on. So now we've got through the resumes, we've got through the test, and we're actually going to interview. So how do you interview for a virtual person who's not close to you? So they may still work virtual, but they are close to you. Then just do a traditional in-person interview. But you can't always do that, right? I hire in Edmonton and Calgary, and I'm in Richmond Hill, Ontario. So I do a Skype interview. And I have Skype for business, but not everybody has that. So I just use the regular free Skype, and I do it on my tablet. And it's got a camera, or you can do it on your laptop. There's a camera. So the person can see you, and you can see the person. So I always check with the person. I say, we're going to do it on Skype. You must do it where you have video access. You can't do it on your PC that doesn't have a webcam. They have to have a webcam or laptop or something to do it. And why do I do that? Well, one, I think it's important that we visually know who each other is, but just like in any other in-person interview, you need to see, how did they show up for this interview? Does it look like they're wearing their sweats? You wouldn't show up at an interview wearing your sweats. Yes, we can work in our slippers and whatever, but when we show up for a professional meeting, we should be still looking professional, and that will give you some insight. So what did they wear? Where are they conducting the interview? Are they sitting in their car? Are they sitting at a Starbucks? Are they in their home office? I had one person do an interview with me, and they were in wherever they live, and they were in their living room, but they were not. They should have been at either a table or a desk. They flopped on the couch. They had the laptop on their lap. They threw their feet up on their coffee table, and they were like leaning back. And I'm like, this is not professional. I didn't hire that person, not just for that reason, but that was like my first X. Okay, they're not professional in thinking this is a real job, and we need to have a certain presentation out to everybody. And the other thing is, I always want to make sure, are they making eye contact? And I let them know, okay, I'm working on two screens here, so you're going to, see me going back and forth, and I've got questions and need to take notes, so I'm not always going to be looking at you. But when I ask them a question and I get them to respond, I do the same thing as if I was in person. Are they looking down in their lap? Are they looking all over the room? Are they looking at me? So all the things you would normally look for, that's what you're going to look for in this. It's just that it's a video as opposed to in person. What do I think you should include in this interview? I always ask what the applicant is looking for in a position or an ideal position. And I know you asked maybe in the pre-screening what interests you about this, but this is a different look at that same question. So I've asked before. One time, I wasn't hiring for myself as an owner. I was hiring when I was an accounting manager. And I said to the person, I said, so when you grow up, because I said, we know this won't be your last job. So I said, when you grow up, what do you think you want to do? That's how I presented the question. Just don't know really why I asked it that way. And what do you think I got as a response? Well, what I'd really like to do is own a bed and breakfast. And I was like, okay, we're at an accounting, bookkeeping position interview. And that's the answer I got. And I said, when do you see that you might be doing that? And they said, in about 3 years. And I went, no, this person, I don't want to hire them. That means they're going to be with me this 2.5 or less time. I went, no, I would like somebody who says they want to grow. They like, this company because they can see there's other positions they might grow to, or different jobs, but maybe same level. But they have different reasons, right? So it's funny what people will tell you, and you weren't really diving in. You were just asking a general question, which we're allowed to ask, right? What are you looking for in an ideal position? So I tend to find out, is what they're looking for matching again with my job description? I keep it in the back of my mind, and I can tell you, I'd say about a third of the time, what they're looking for is not what I'm hiring for, even though they answered the pre-screen questionnaire differently. So it's just a different way to ask kind of almost the same question and see if they give you the same answer. I ask more behavioral questions. In doing that, I actually go to my third point here is I review my core values. So I state my core values, and I give, examples. I say what that defines as and an example of it. And I ask them, so knowing that, can you tell me where you have exercised or shown this value in your business work? Now, almost all of them will start telling you the answer you want to hear. And it's, well, I would do this. That's not what you asked. You asked for, give me an example where you have exhibited this behavior in your work life. That's what you asked. And that's how you need to ask it. So I will stop people, or I'll let them go and go and go, and then I'll say, okay, that's great. You just told me the answer you think I want to hear. I asked you for, give me an example. So I do not let them off the hook. I make them squirm, and I see how long it takes them to think of one. And it's funny, sometimes they will only think of one kind of job, one kind of scenario, and they'll keep repeating it. And it's like, okay, really? If I look at your job resume, your resume, you've worked at 4 places. I mean, there should be more where they're exhibiting those kind of values all the time. So I look for, are they giving me different stories? And do they meet their answer, their example, does it meet with what I would find an acceptable behavior in dealing with my company's core values? So I'm going to say, if you don't have core values, I'm going to say, I know and I hate it. I'll tell you, I've done it now twice. We've just revised ours to make them kind of, I would say, more gelled with where we're at compared to where we were at when I did them originally. And I hate it. And you're like, oh, I just want to get the work done. I'll tell you, I'm the first person to say that too. But in coming up with values, and if this is your first hire in that, they'll then be able to relate with what's acceptable and what's not acceptable for you without you actually wagging your finger and saying, please don't do that. I just find it does help, and it does start creating a culture. So I would absolutely, if you don't have them, try and put some in place. And I take a lot of time in my interview. I take as much time as I'm finding out about them as I tell them about us. So I tell them all the things we do, what our culture is like, all the different, events, et cetera, what our structure is like. We've, what the management setup is, and maybe it's only you and somebody else. Okay, that's fine. But you need to tell them, hey, we all have to jump in here and do different parts of the work. So, if you need something, you got to be able to say you need it. If you see someone struggling, you got to be able to go help them, right? Like, you need to tell whatever it is you want this person to do while they're working with you. And the thing is, you're going, okay, but they're virtual. But we communicate constantly, and I'm going to show you some of the ways we do that. So you just want to make sure that everything about you've laid on the line, and your expectations, because you, again, are putting a lot of time and effort in on this. You want to make sure you make the right hire. So now you've figured out who you think you want to hire. The one thing I'm going to have to say is, if it's a subcontract, it's a different scenario. So right now we're going to look at if it's an employee situation. So you're going to hire as an employee, even if it's a part-time employee. The issue is, if they came in your office, you would provide them with a computer. They wouldn't bring their own laptop, probably. You would provide them with a desk and a computer and screens, multi-screens, if you're going to be dealing virtually and things, and be working as efficiently as you can. If they're out at clients, you need to get a hold of them. You maybe need to get a hold of them in between clients, et cetera. So do they need a cell phone? Do they have a headset? Because if they're going to work virtually, it's not the same as just picking up the receiver. You need to have hands-free to be able to work. So I have found that now these have come up. Subcontractor doesn't come up, right? They are responsible for setting up their own office, and I absolutely expect them to do that. And I will tell them they need to have no fewer than 2 monitors. They need to confirm with me they do. I say you need a headset. We are going to be using Skype for Business. We are going to be calling you on it. We can see when you're available. That's the best thing. We can see when you're available. There's a little green. We know when you're working. See, that's one way you're going to know that they're working, because you can see they're actually on their machine and they're doing stuff. So I put it out there, okay, I expect you to have these things, and I know they're going to break down, et cetera, because most people have it already. So I don't tend to go and buy them the hardware, because if they quit in 6 months or whatever, or don't work out or what have you, then now you've got all this equipment, and how are they going to get it to you? If you hire someone in Edmonton and you're in Toronto, that's problematic, right? So what I suggest is you do more allowances. So we do a technology allowance per pay, so we put something on it. So it's just to bolster, yes, we expect that you are having to support yourself in these. And it's not a lot. Like, I figured it out and this staff member, when she goes out and she's doing sales as well, she's got a tablet, because that's easier, and she has a second screen for it, so that she can be showing and dealing stuff with clients and that. So when she's got a laptop, a second screen for her laptop, a tablet, she's got to do the headset, and she's got to have a cell phone. And so we're doing a cell phone allowance to cover some of the costs of the actual usage, and because she's using way more than she ever did. But on the technology, on the rest of it, it's like $16 a paycheck. That's what we worked it out. And she went, yeah, that looks good to me. It doesn't amount to a lot. So I'm not saying a lot, but they have to see that you are providing something for them. Tracking their work. So how do you track their work? Top one that I've got here is you can use screen tracking software. Now, that's kind of problematic when they're working virtually at their own office. So to be honest, I don't suggest that. If they were working in your own office and you want to make sure, hey, you are not looking up about other jobs, you are not looking up, doing events tonight with your family, you're not making up your, Amazon shopping list, whatever. No, you're working on my work. Then I would say if they're internal, yes, a screen tracking software. And I know companies who do use it. And they do also have a couple of virtual people, but you may want to, but I'm going to say I find that a bit invasive, because they're going to be using that computer for their downtime. It is their personal computer. I would try and use a workflow software. So there's many out there. There's Arrow that works with QBO. There's Practice Ignition does a little bit. Carbon, Jetpack. There's a lot. One, if you haven't hired before, or you're now finding, yes, I'm hiring my third, fourth, fifth person, you need to have processes in place. So everybody's doing things the way you want it, because otherwise you lose control. So you're going to need it anyway. And why does this help track their work? Because you assign them tasks, and then you can go in and see, did they do it? I mean, yes, they could just tick, 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 and they didn't do it. But you can see where they're at using a workflow software. Are they seemingly keeping up? The other thing is, of course, when they do hand things in for review or whatever, you're going to see. And you need to do that. You need to have some checks and balances to see, are they doing what you think they're doing. We personally do what we call a quality control check, and we do it after they've been working with us a couple of months to make sure all the things we've told them they should be doing, they actually are. So we go in and check in some of their files. So I do suggest a workflow software. Use cloud hosting. So we use Microsoft 365 Office, and we use the SharePoint. You can use OneDrive or SharePoint. We figured that SharePoint would work better for us. I'm going to talk about why and why you could use Drive in a second on another slide. The other thing is use software that does real-time tracking in the system. So we're using Arrow, and Arrow actually does real-time tracking. So as soon as you go in and start working, the clock starts ticking. You could use T-Sheets. T-Sheets has real-time tracking, so that they have to have it on. They can't just go in and put, I worked 3 hours on this. Tell them they have to be using real-time tracking, and you're going to track to see that their time is in there, that they were doing things. So I do suggest doing some of that. How does the interaction work, the actual physical interaction? We do virtual meetings, and we're using Join Me. We're now changing, I think, to Zoom, because we were having some issues with Join Me. It worked fine on my end, but when we'd passed the screen sharing to somebody, it wasn't working so well on their end. So there is GoToMeeting, there is Join Me, there's Zoom, there's quite a few others. Again, if you Google, you'll find there's quite a few. Zoom is free, with limited certain aspects to it. Works fine. We've been using it for doing some training with our clients, in fact. So that leads to the next thing. Whatever you use, you need to have screen sharing. 2 reasons. One, if you're training the staff and or clients, they need to be able to see your screen where you are. If you want to do group meetings, say you're used to doing meetings in your office, well, you need to include them in, right? And they're going to need to see what it is you're showing everybody. And then problem solving is a big one. And we use our Skype for Business, but we've used Join Me, et cetera. So one of our staff is on site, say, at a client, or they're working just at their own desk on a virtual client. And they're like, okay, I'm getting this error message, or I've got this transaction, I'm not really sure, I know the client screwed it up, I don't know how to unscrew it up. Whatever their issue problem is, we then do screen sharing. So we do it with Skype for Business, or we'll use one of these virtual meeting conference softwares, and we have them show their screen, and then you can look at it, and they can have their cursor and be saying, look here, look there, and show the different screens, and you can help walk them through. It is no different than you going to their desk in your own office. No different whatsoever. Okay, one small difference. Maybe when you screen share, it's not quite as big as it normally is. That can be an issue. But for the most part, it's pretty good. We do it all the time and have no issues. Here, there's all the lists that I said that we use for doing our meetings. Skype for Business I love, because we can hit and say, do a meeting, and call the person, and it calls through our computer, and then we're not using our landlines or our cell phones. So we're not using time on our cell phone. It's all through the internet, so I love it. Skype will do, regular free Skype will do that too. Now, we also do instant messaging. So since we have Skype for Business, we do our instant messaging through that. So just as if you were texting somebody, we use our Skype, and it pops up, it starts blinking, et cetera, at the bottom of your screen for things that you need people to kind of answer right away. Regular free Skype will also do instant messaging between people. There's also Slack, and I'm not sure if you're aware of, but Slack now works and is integrated with QBO. So if you're doing a lot of your things through QBO, you can do instant messaging through it with your staff. Oh, I have Skype for Business down twice and nobody noticed that. See, and I even had somebody review this. Nobody noticed that. I guess I like it a lot. So there's other ones out there as well. Skype for Business does come free if you're using Microsoft 365 Office. So if you're getting the whole Office suite with your Word, your Excel, etc., you get Skype for Business included. So if you have that, you may not know you have Skype for Business. I Skype with my husband on Skype for Business. Other people who have it, I can Skype with them. So it's not, you may be able to do it with your clients as well as staff members. Okay, so this is what I was kind of saying. What do you do? What software do you use? And the whole thing is collaborate. How do you collaborate with staff? If you're in the old way of doing things, you might just work on your computer or you work on a server and all your staff has access to your files on the server, but only one of you can be in at a time. And that's problematic sometimes, and especially when you want to work with somebody who's in some other location. So we started using Drive, and then when we went to the Microsoft 365 Office, we decided, are we going to go to the OneDrive or are we going to go to SharePoint? We decided SharePoint. It really kind of looks like our server. There's a couple of hiccups in how we have to do things, not as easy or as smooth as we'd like, but we can still do everything we always did on a server. But what I like is the collaboration. So define collaboration. It's kind of one of those buzzwords that's getting used these days. It's to work jointly on an activity, especially to produce or create something. So here's what I like. I can have something I'm working on, a document. For instance, one of my staff members and I just spoke recently at the IPBC conference, and we were jointly speaking, and we jointly worked on what we were going to submit to propose, and then what our actual PowerPoint looked like, and what all we were going to talk about as our content to it. And so we could be in our own offices and both working on it and looking at it together, but on our own screen and making changes. So I'd work on one area, she'd work on another area. You can actually see the other person's cursor and the color is different, and it'll tell you so-and-so's working on this with you. We now do a lot of work together. If you want to be working on an Excel spreadsheet and you say, okay, I need you to do this here, but I really like it all in the same sheet, you can work wherever on your area and they can work on theirs. I love it. So we don't just share and have a place so that we can manage our documents. We actually work on our documents in the same document at the same time. And I travel a lot. So I can have staff, even my admin staff here working on stuff, and I can be working on it at the exact same time and not having to wait for people. So if you're not doing that and you haven't looked at it, I will say go look at Google Drive, go look at SharePoint or OneDrive. It's just truly amazing. And here's where I've listed them all. These are the softwares that are doing it. These are the main ones I find that most people are aware of and using. And you can even share those files with your clients, both in Drive and in SharePoint. Now we share space with our clients and we have them upload, etc. So you see, you can even do it virtually with your clients. It's not just your staff. It's a whole embracing of how you work with people. Now the next thing is, yes, you should do performance reviews. So how are you going to do that when you don't see them all the time and they're kind of just working independently? Well, you do get to see their work eventually. I'm sure it's going to get reviewed by you or somebody else in your office. So what we've put in place is we're now starting, just recently, we're starting to put in a little quick performance assessment on each job. So let's say we do a year end. We get the file, a consultant is reviewing it. They then fill in a little checklist on how did the person do? Did you get everything? Does it look like, because you're always doing a little bit of a quality assurance level looking at, is this how I told them I wanted this work done? How up to date, messy, clean do you see the books are? So you can just make some quick comments on every job when you go to review it and save it for them so you can actually do a performance review. When they bring things to you, good, bad, and indifferent, you can be writing them down and tracking them as you would for any other performance review. But what I would suggest, do your performance review either in person or by a video meeting where, again, you can see and have eye contact with them. Absolutely. Don't just do like you are now. You don't see me, you just hear me. I think it's really important that you have that visual content. Okay, and we're almost at the end, and this is my last slide. And it says this is just a performance review. You can't plead insanity. So many people cringe at the performance review, but I'm going to say very important when you are doing virtually, because you kind of forget sometimes. You can't just say, hey, come into my office and let's have a quick chat, right? So you need to make a real effort to make sure you are reviewing and you are giving them feedback, because they need feedback. Okay, we've only got about 3 or 4 minutes left. Sorry, guys. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to our coordinators for some questions.
Yes, thanks, Anna. So before we end off, we do have a couple of quick questions. One of them was, which brand of headset do you recommend for your employees?
Oh, jeepers. Mine that I have is called Plantronics, Plantronics. And get this, all right? I'm an accountant through and through. I'm cheap sometimes. And I got mine used off of Kijiji. Because I'll tell you, it'll cost $350. I did not pay that. I paid like, I think, $80 for a used one. So you wouldn't believe, go on Kijiji, see if you can find one, but I love it. But there's others out there.
Okay, perfect. And then the second question we have here is, what is the name of the app that compares tests for the candidates?
Capterra. Yeah, Capterra. Capterra. And then there's another one. I've only ever used Capterra, but if you also Google software comparisons, those sites will come up. But Capterra is the one that I've used the most.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dianna. So it looks like those were our 2 questions for the day. We are going to have my colleague here, Stephen, wrap up for us.
Yep, great. Thanks, Carla, and thank you so much, Dianna, for your presentation today. A lot of valuable information we can take away and think about when we're looking at recruiting new hires for our staff or for our agency. So really want to thank you for your time. I want to thank everyone for attending our webinar today. Don't forget to reach out to your account managers for our next event in our webinar series, which we held on October 11th. It will be the client recruitment process hosted by Andrew Wall. So once again, I want to thank everyone for the time. Reach out to your account managers for more information on that next webinar, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.